3, 2, 1. Hi everybody, welcome to part 3 where we're gonna do the enemy shoots portion. First thing is first, it's probably a good idea at this point to name all of your sprites, to rename them. So I just named this Snorlax Bro. Remember, you can right click and left click info and name it up here and click back. I named this projectile the Z's Rocket. I named the enemy Derpy the Dragon, and I named his projectile Awesome Fireball Doom. So now we need to start to make the code where the enemy is shooting at us and we are shooting at them. So to start, you should have something like this set up here. So that's going to set the basic size and costume. If we go over to the sprite, what we want to do is we're going to do when clicked hide. We want to take off the code we made before. We can't have it as when received shoot because that's when your rocket goes. We want it to do a fireball fire, whatever you want, but I'm just gonna do shoot 2 to start. And then I'm gonna bring over all the code. So if you look back at your projectile, you can put all your code in the backpack, and we're gonna bring it all over to the new enemy projectile. So we can bring that in. So we've got when I receive shoot 2, create a clone of myself. I'm gonna put this up in here. And when I receive a clone, and these are going to be our visual characteristics of the fireball. This is how fast it'll go. I'm going to pull that out because I want it to animate fast. If I wanted to change the color, what would I do? I could go over here, grab a set color, and maybe I'd change that to 50. So I could totally change the color if I wanted to. You have full access to all your other code, and you can start to think about how you'll put it in. I just want to read through this code that I pulled over real quick. When I start as clone, I will show. I'm going to go to Derpy the Dragon. So this fireball, go to Derpy the Dragon. It's going to point towards Snorlax, and it's going to repeat until touching Snorlax or touching edge. So that means he's going to fire a fireball at your character, and it's just going to keep on going until it touches the edge. Before, this said just move 10 steps. I changed it to random 8 to 12, because maybe that just adds a little bit of randomness or variation, which can create some challenge. And then when it starts as a clone, set to 50%, change color to 50, and next costume forever to animate. So if we do this, nothing will happen right now because there is no action creating a shoot 2. But this looks pretty good for our basic. That's kind of like the enemy version of what we have here. Just go to Snorlax Bro, point direction. So now what we want to do is we want to go to Derpy the Dragon, our enemy that we will defeat shortly. And we want to start to bring in some code for him. What we are gonna do to start, we need to create that shoot 2 broadcast. So if we look over at Snorlax, we can see that our shoot broadcast is created when we press the spacebar. Now the enemy isn't going to be based on pressing a spacebar. We want it to happen pretty much all the time, right? So this is even simpler. We can just do a forever block and we create that broadcast, shoot 2. So this is forever. It's just going to start to shoot that fireball, and that fireball is going to go at your character. But we don't want it to shoot infinitely. Here, I'll press play real quick. So notice how laggy we're getting because that green fireball, it just creates like a bajillion of those. And what we want to do is create a wait. So we don't want it to create a bajillion fireballs instantly. We want it to wait for a little while between each one. So we press this here. I click over here. So we want to point towards Snorlax Bro. I'm sorry, there we go. I changed his name. So now it's shooting towards Snorlax Bro, and we're going to repeat until, I'm going to change it, make sure it's touching Snorlax Bro. He's just going to be shooting fireballs. Now how you can create more difficulty is either adding more fireballs or changing the speed. You can start to code some variations, right? Okay, I think those are the basics and it looks pretty good. So the first thing to do to make this a little bit harder is to bring in some movement for our character. I'm gonna bring in this code here. What this code says, and this is on our villain, Derpy the Dragon, he's gonna go, his X is gonna be 0, so that means middle of the screen and kind of up top. He's gonna wait 10 seconds. And then in forever, I moved him to the left here, and I brought in a glide block. And then I moved him to the right and I brought in a glide block. So this is kind of like what we're doing with our letters. So that means he's going to glide back and forth on the screen. And then I brought in some random, because if he's just gliding 1 second or 2 seconds, that's predictable. But if you add some randomness, that creates some variation. So if I press play real quick, so now he's going to be in the center for about 10 seconds or 5 seconds. I don't know. We could have like maybe music to start, and then when the music ends, he starts to move. Or you could have it where he starts to move once he's been hit twice. So maybe you could have like the escalating difficulty of he starts doing more and more things. Maybe when you hit him 5 times, maybe he starts to, instead of just going up, back and forth on the screen, maybe he starts to move around the entirety of the screen. So this is when you can start to think about your interactions and what you want to do with your code. Now what we want to do is to create some of those sound effects and interaction. So I'm going to bring some of these in. Now, before, if we go back to Snorlax Bro, what we had before was if the space bar is pressed, it's going to play that sound. It's going to change that color. What we have now on Derpy the Dragon is similar, but it's if touching Z's rocket, it's going to play a sound effect. So I just went into sounds, and you can record your own, you could download it, or you could just search through some of their pre-made sounds. But that's an on-hit sound effect, and that just happens each time. So say if I hit him, it'll play that sound, right? So if touching the Z's rocket, it's going to play yeah. You guys might not be able to hear it, but it's working on my screen. So the other thing I want to do is bring in that visual block here, right? If touching the Z's rocket, and it's going to do that color effect shift, right? So here. So now when my rocket hits, looks good. And we could do the same thing here too. So if we go back to Snorlax, let's pull that off, and let's change that up to if touching, awesome Fire of Doom, then I'll play that sound effect. And same thing here. So if touching, awesome Fireball of Doom. Then we're going to create that color effect. Okay, so it looks good. All right, so those effects are working perfect on my screen. I'm sorry if you can't hear it, but that's pretty much it, right? So this is our basics where we're shooting each other, we're having visual effects on hit. We've got some movement, so we've added some difficulty. For our next part, we are going to do win screens, lose screens, moving backgrounds, and then life. Okay, I'm excited to see what you make. See you then. Bye.